Go.
Yeah. Where am I? Okay, there I am. Our panel discussion is on manipulation in abusive groups, and we will be discussing and focusing on several manipulative techniques, specifically hot seats or public confessions, thought blocking or thought stopping, and gaslighting. Each of our panelists will spend about 10 minutes discussing one of these techniques that are used frequently in abusive groups. Then the other panelists will share their thoughts and experiences. What we'll have two parts on this panel discussion. Part one, we will be talking about gaslighting and thought stopping. And then we're going to have a 10-minute break, and then we'll go back and talk about hot seats and confessions. And then the rest of the time will be for question and answers. So if you wouldn't mind jotting down some questions as they come up in your mind or putting them on the chat, that would be great because we're going to hold all the questions until the end. And my name is Wendy Duncan. I'm a licensed social worker in the state of Texas. I have a master's degree from Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And most of my career has been spent in the public mental health, but I've also been in the private mental health field. My husband and I are former members of a pseudo-Christian Bible-based cult, and after working on our recovery for several years, we became very interested in the psychodynamics of these abusive groups and its impact on the individuals that survive those cults or those groups. I retired for the third and final time during the pandemic this last year, and much of my time is spent talking or emailing to individuals, writing, facilitating support groups, doing educational presentations. I am also the author of I Can't Hear God Anymore: Life in a Dallas Cult, which can be purchased on our website, www.dallascult.com, or Amazon. And it's also soon to be available in audio format. So, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Cindy Matthews. Cindy Matthews. And let me just get a. Oh, there she is. Cindy Matthews. She's going to be speaking about gaslighting. She is an experienced counseling clinician with over 17 years working in private practice and in academia. She is currently an assistant professor in the counseling program at Southern Methodist University here in Dallas. Cindy's passion is for social justice and advocacy, which are exemplified in her counseling practice and current research, which focuses on effective counseling interventions for marginalized populations such as cult survivors, domestic violence survivors, LGBTQ plus populations. And based on her scholarship and clinical expertise, she's researched and developed theory for counseling with former second and multiple generation adult cult recovery survivors. And next we have Molly Kashotka. And she is a high school French teacher. She lives in the Dallas Metroplex with her son, Cade, and their dog, Owen. And she holds 2 undergraduate degrees in French and 1 in psychology from the University of North Texas. She also has a master's in education. And Molly was in a Bible-based cult, and shortly after she left, she began her recovery by attending Wellspring. She has been working on her cult recovery for over 10 years, closer to 13 actually, and is passionate about offering support to survivors of religious cults and spiritual abuse. Molly will be speaking on thought blocking, thought stopping. And then our third panelist is Doug Duncan, who will speak about hot seats. Doug is a therapist in the Dallas Metroplex specializing in recovery from cultic and spiritual abuse. In addition, he works as a case manager at Blue Cross Blue Shield. Doug was a member of an aberrant religious group for more than 20 years, and it was that experience that led to his commitment to help others heal from abusive groups or cultic experiences. In addition to counseling individuals who have been in an abusive group, he co-facilitates a support group for former members. He is a frequent presenter at churches, civic groups, conferences, and has spoken nationally and internationally on cults and spiritual abuse. And he also works as a legal consultant with attorneys whose clients have been involved with cults. So I'm going to turn it over to Cindy, and she's going to be talking about gaslighting.
Hey, nice to see you all. Well, actually, I guess I'll see you later. Let me just share my screen here, and then we can start. Let me start presentation here, slideshow. In the beginning. All right, we'll just go one down here. All right, so let me talk about gaslighting. This is the one that most of us know about and are very familiar with. So what is gaslighting? It is a type of abuse. And I want you to remember it is a type of abuse. It can be emotional and psychological, but through gaslighting, it can lead to physical, sexual, financial, and of course, spiritual abuse. And it is a form of manipulation that occurs in relationship. It can be to a person, it can be to an organization or a system, and it can be through doctrines or policies. You will see this kind of manipulation in cult relationships, from leaders to members, or from members to other members. You'll see it in domestic violence and abusive relationships. You'll see it in friendships. I'm putting that in quotes. In work relationships, you'll also see it from bosses, abusive, narcissistic bosses, perhaps. And you'll see that in racism and sexism and any kind of ism where there's a microaggression against others, and the one doing it will use it to deny that it's actually happening. The abuser questions the target or the victim or you to question your judgment or reality. Within you, it creates self-doubt, insecurity, distrust. But also, I want you to remember it creates a healthy paranoia. Once you recognize it and see it, and you see somebody doing it, it's like, I see what they're doing now. Also, it is a toxic manipulation and power. It is used to control and manipulate other people. So how it works is the abuser undermines your whole perception of reality. The goal is for you to question or second guess yourself, your memories, or your perceptions. The abuser also spreads lies or rumors and gossip, so then others start to question you as well. And you question your thoughts and your feelings, and you don't feel validated or understood. I actually saw this happen on Friday in a group of speakers where the people asking the question knew what was going on, and the leader was so good at using gaslighting that those who had facts and figures in front of them questioned themselves in the reading of them. And it was like, no, the way that they said it was a lie. You really start to question yourself. Now, I want to talk about the difference really quickly between a cycle of abuse that we talk about in domestic violence and the narcissistic abuse cycle. You'll see that gaslighters are often narcissists and use this abuse cycle. So in a normal, if there is a normal cycle of abuse, you'll see that there's a calm honeymoon period, then tensions build, then an incident occurs, and there's usually reconciliation through the abuser apologizing, saying sorry, they give excuses, whatever. In the narcissistic abuse cycle, you'll see that there is a honeymoon phase, the tension builds, and there's the explosion. So similar here, but then this part here is there is denial. This is where the gaslighting happens. I never did this. This was your fault. And so it re-victimizes the victim of the abuse. So the history of the term gaslighting, of course, it came from a film by Alfred Hitchcock called Gaslight, where this manipulative husband tries to make his wife think she's losing her mind. And that's really what gaslighting does, is it makes you question and think, am I the crazy one here? But he slowly dims the flame on the gas lamp and cuts her off from family and friends. And the wife constantly second guesses herself. So counselors and psychologists started using this label as a type of emotionally abusive behavior. So I want to talk about the types of gaslighting really quickly. First of all, they discredit you. So they're going to spread rumors, they're going to spread gossip, and they pretend to worry about you when talking to others. The abuser will say they are crazy, they're making things up, they may deflect the blame, and they change the subject instead of responding, ask a question about your role in the situation. I remember when I asked a boss one time, well, I went to a boss to talk about some really nasty behavior that was going on by a coworker. And she immediately asked me, so what is your role that is causing them to treat you this way? So in no way did she want to say that this guy really was an abusive person, that I was causing the abuse. They may lie by saying you're making things up, it never happened. You'll often see that in terms of sexual abuse, or even in the media right now, when someone says this person sexually abused me, they say, well, it never happened. It was a fantasy. Even Freud, when he first started studying women and hysteria and any kind of sexual abuse, it was kind of like, you're making it up. It's a wish or a fantasy. They minimize your thoughts or feelings, and they trivialize your emotions. Why are you being so sensitive? Calm down. It really didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. And they try to define your reality, so you become dependent on the group. So it's like, okay, I question my reality, what really is going on, and you keep looking outside of yourself for what truth is. They deny any wrongdoing, so they don't take responsibility. And so often that makes it really hard for the one who's been gaslighted to move on or heal. This happened a lot in my cult. They use compassionate words as weapons. So they'll say, you know how much I love you. I would never hurt you. You know, I'm telling you this because I love you so much, and I really am concerned about your eternal welfare and your being as a mother and all that kind of crap. And it really confuses you because they're being compassionate, and at the same time, they're lying to you. They'll reframe conversations, and they always twist the story in their favor. So here's the tools that gaslighters use. And I think you'll recognize a lot of these, especially with politicians. It's kind of really easy to look at that kind of thing, but also with cults and abusive relationships. They'll tell blatant lies to you or to everyone else. She made it up. She really didn't know what she was talking about. They deny ever having said something. It just amazes me that someone will deny it, and then somebody will show a video of them saying it, and they'll be like, oh, that's not what I meant. You took it out of context. They will use, the narcissist or the abuser will use things that are near and dear to you as ammunition. Your family, your eternity, your health. They'll use scare tactics to try and keep you in this controlled state of believing only what they want you to believe, and to rely on them for truth. They'll wear you down over time. And the actions won't match their words of what they're looking at from you and what they're looking at from themselves. This I see all the time. They'll use positive reinforcement and compliments to confuse you. I think you're an amazing person. I think you're wonderful. I really appreciate all you do. However, you may want to rethink how you think about whatever. So it's like the but. They will align people against you, and they will tell others you're crazy. So when you're being gaslighted, here's what you need to look for in your own mind. You start to doubt your own feelings and reality. Oh, maybe it's not that bad. You question your judgment and your perceptions. It's really hard making decisions. You feel vulnerable. You feel insecure. You feel alone. You feel powerless. And you wonder if you're stupid or crazy. And often you'll feel disappointed in yourself, like something's wrong with me. I'm the weak one. And you feel confused about the actions of the abuser. Also, you worry that you're too sensitive. Maybe I'm the sensitive one here, where in actuality, you are experiencing real feelings and emotions. You can have a sense of impending doom. You second guess yourself. You assume others are disappointed in you. You wonder what's wrong with you, and you have a really hard time making decisions. Here's some things I want you to remember. You are not to blame for the abuser's behavior. In no way did you cause anything to happen. The abuser made the choice to blame you, and they are responsible for their behavior and actions, not you. Nothing you did caused them to make this choice. And here's really something really important to remember that I work with, especially with victims of domestic violence. Nothing you do will change the situation with them. Nothing you do or say is going to change them, no matter how obedient you are, no matter how good you are seen as the troublemaker. I know when I was in my cult, I tried so hard to be obedient, and the more obedient I became, the more it became twisted. Nothing changed. You will not be able to change them. So learning to set healthy boundaries, leaving, getting counseling can all be very, very helpful. Finding allies within the system that you can test and say, did they really just say that? I thought I saw this happen. And people outside of the system is super helpful. Find a partner to help you bounce reality off of. That can be family, friends, coworkers, outside family. And remember, the more something is repeated, the more it is believed, but that doesn't make it true. And that's what I found in the cult I was in, that they repeated things and everybody was like, okay, I guess that's truth, but it doesn't mean it's actually true. There's my resources. And now we're going to have a conversation about it. Hey, Doug and Molly and Wendy, you want to talk about gaslighting?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so Doug, Molly, Wendy, what kind of thoughts came up to you for you during that? What kind of questions came up about gaslighting?
One thing that occurred to me was I just was so identified with so much of what you said based on my own cultic experience, dealing with a narcissist. That's kind of the thing. The narcissist can never be wrong. So it wasn't possible to have any kind of a conflict with our leader, our cult leader, that it wasn't somehow your fault. I mean, you were doing something just vile, no matter what. Even if he had done something vile, it was still somehow going to get to be twisted and be your fault. It just, certainly, I certainly related to that, and I'm sure a lot of people can as well.
Well, and that's really similar to the group I was in terms of pray for your own answers, pray for your direction. But if you don't get something that is in line with the leader or leaders, then you are wrong. You need to pray again. Your answers are coming from Satan. So it's question yourself. Your answers can only be in line with what the leader. So yeah, very, very similar to what you're talking about, Doug.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this at our last support group, and they all related to the gaslighting. Yes, my leader did that. Yes, and it was really interesting. But what we talked about was you're going to have to do some cognitive restructuring, because you can't keep carrying their thoughts in your mind and say, oh, I really was wrong. You're going to have to change all that by reviewing what he said or she said and contradicting that and having a new, what am I trying to say, different...
Well, you just need to have a different message for yourself going forward.
Right.
And developing confidence in your own thoughts and feelings, which is really hard to do because there is no confidence there. Speaking for someone born and raised in, it's like I had to establish, not reestablish, but establish confidence in my own thoughts and that inner voice that was saying, yeah, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Molly?
Yeah, I was thinking, I agree with everything that you guys said there, but I also too came from a religious group, a religious cult. And as much as it was preached, you know, humility and being Christ-like and all that, it was always the victim's fault. You never saw the leadership take the blame for
Right.
you know, it was always something wrong with the sheep, you know. I wasn't opening up to the Spirit of Christ enough, and I wasn't allowing God's forgiveness to flow through me enough, you know. And it's like you always like took it upon yourself that you were doing something wrong, when really, you know, when you're outside of that looking at it, it's like I shouldn't have been apologizing for anything. You know what I mean? Like the abuser was just putting all that on you, and it's no different, religious group or not religious group. It's just the cycle of abuse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that apologizing is huge, Molly. It's just if you find yourself constantly apologizing, oh, I'm so sorry for things that you shouldn't really be sorry for. I think that's kind of a sign of it too. And it's always done in such a loving way.
Yeah.
Not always. I mean, I know, Doug, you've talked about some very harsh ways that the gaslighting was done, is that, you know, really off base. I know from where I came from, it was just a very loving, oh, sister, we just want you to know we love you. However you are wrong.
Yeah.
That's all about it too, Cindy.
Well, one thing Wendy and I were talking about a little bit, I guess yesterday, was, you know, how this would look in a more secular context, because all four of us have come out of religious cults, but this kind of thing can go on in non-religious context, in political cults or business cults. I've seen people before who were in a business cult, and you know there are other contexts where this sort of thing can happen, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm even thinking work contexts. I've had bosses that try to do that to make themselves look like I know everything and question your reality. And I saw someone do that on Friday, like I was talking about, that was just, you need to trust me. You just need to trust me as your boss. And it's like, yeah, but you're hurting us. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
So yeah, it happens in domestic violence relationships. It happens in boss relationships, even with friends.
Yeah.
But and I liked what you said, Cindy. I like that you gave some recovery. You had the slide on recovery, because I think it's important for the people who are attending this seminar to realize that you do have a recovery journey ahead. You can't, it's not a quick fix. It's not, let me read one book, let me go to see a counselor for 3 or 4 sessions. You know, there's a lot of stuff that you have to work through, because you've been in a mind controlled, thought reform environment.
Yeah. Well, and one of the nice things, and in the research that I've done, pretty much everyone who's left with the people I've studied, they've left with someone else because they had someone to validate reality with. And it was really helpful when I left to have my husband and my 3 kids, that we were bouncing ideas off. Did they just say what I thought they said? Wait a second, can I process this? Because I'm thinking, and still now I think we've been out for 13 years, 14 years now. Still somebody will say something and still use those kind of techniques, and to have somebody to process with is really helpful. It's really nice that you have this kind of, not a narcissist to bounce it off of, but a trusted individual.
Right. Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. Another reason to maintain those relationships with people that are still in the group without telling them they're wrong. Just if they ever want to bounce ideas off someone from the outside is there. If they don't have someone within the group who's starting to question and want to leave, you know. I mean, I'm learning that firsthand, having people, loved ones in a group. You can't go tell them they're in a cult. It doesn't work.
No,
Never
that
works.
doesn't work.
But, you know, the nice thing with me being out 13 years, and I never really fought against the people in it. I just tried to leave quietly. But like 2 years ago, my brother and sister-in-law called me and said, how did you leave? And they were able to process with me. Even last week, I had a nephew contact me. And so I've had these groups of people that are contact, why did you leave? And what happened? And what were you thinking? Okay, that's what I thought. And just to have somebody, because you can't tell the people in, but if they approach you, it really helps to be that kind of sanity voice for that.
Yeah, that's great.
That is good. Okay.
Okay. So I guess we will move on to our second panelist, and that is Molly Kashatka. And
Paused. It's going.
Okay, well, thank you for that great presentation, Dr. Matthews, on gaslighting. It was very informative and also really just brings us right into this idea of thought stopping. In fact, we were talking about thought stopping in our last 10-minute discussion. So I kind of made a short presentation. I know we're just taking 10 minutes for each of us presenters, just kind of presenting thought stopping to someone maybe who hasn't heard of it before, and just giving like some basic definitions and some examples. So thought stopping, also called thought blocking. You may have heard it called that before. So what is it? What is thought stopping? So the process of thought stopping really begins when words and phrases take on a new meaning that are particular to a specific group. Then that meaning might be perceived to all those on the outside of the group or the outside world. These new words or phrases, also considered jargon, are incomprehensible or not comprehensible to their full meaning to non-group members unless they are explained, or unless that person is initiated into the group in some way. So this idea is also has been called loaded language, one of the criteria for a thought reform environment by Robert Lifton. And he says here, I put this quote, he says that this jargon consists of thought terminating cliches which serve to alter members' thought processes to conform to the group's way of thinking. Okay, so in his writings, that's called loading the language. So here's some examples. I'm starting with some broad ones, and then I'm going to end with one that was used in my group. Okay, so here are some more popular thought terminating or thought stopping cliches that you might have heard of. Think positive. I know I'm hearing that a lot in the New Age movement. You hear a lot about positive thinking. Even in the wellness movement, there's this idea of if you just allow positive thoughts to permeate your mind and control that as much as you can, positivity will come into your life, and you will draw that to yourself. I think the danger part of that is that can turn into magical thinking, where if you think positive thoughts, things in my life will magically improve and get better. And that can get dangerous if you get too far off into the thinking positive. Another one is just believe, right? Maybe you're thinking, I'm seeing something here that isn't right. I'm feeling something in my intuition saying that something isn't right, but you know what? I'm just going to believe. I'm just going to believe this doctrine. I'm just going to believe this guru. I'm just going to believe this boss, or I'm just going to believe my abuser, that what they're saying is true, and it's kind of supersedes what even my reality is telling me. Been learning a lot about Scientology, especially through Leah Remini's awesome documentary talking about an SP being a suppressive person. Like, what does that mean to be an SP, or be labeled a suppressive person? Well, if you have been put in that category of being an SP by someone who's in Scientology, that means that you're someone who is coming against the work of the Church of Scientology, and you are not to be messed with or touched or reckoned with. So if you've been labeled an SP, or if you're part of that group and you're told this person is an SP, you'll have no problem just cutting them off, because in doing so, you're giving yourself over to the greater good and the doctrine of the cult. Here is a popular cliche used in multi-level marketing. A job, you're just over broke, right? People who have real jobs, real 9-to-5 jobs, they're the real suckers. They're the real ones in the pyramid scheme, right? They're never going to be their own CEOs. They're never going to give it all and invest everything they have to this program over here. They just have a job, right? So that becomes a cliche. Also, the idea you have to spend money to make money. Well, maybe there's a kernel of truth to that, right? But if you are preaching that you have to spend money to make money, and you take that to its extreme, you can hold on to that above your own rational thoughts, saying maybe I shouldn't invest the rest of my savings into this product because there really might not be a return on it, right? I might just be going broke and giving everything I have to some sort of company or program, and there really isn't going to be a return, right? But you know, the doctrine there is saying, no, give it your all, right? You got to spend, you got to keep investing before you're ever going to see anything. Couple I'm ending with here, ones I've heard in, you know, the Christian world, you know, it's lies of the devil, or you're thinking something contrary or negative about the group, or negative about Christians, or negative about what the pastor's saying. You've opened up yourself to lies from the enemy. And you know, Satan, he seeks who he can devour. He's just right around there trying to just gobble up your mind and keep you away from the body of Christ and make you question God's people. That's kind of a broad one. Maybe a lot of different kind of denominations heard that one. But this last one here was a real big one that I had used to cut people out of my life. And now I'm actually on the receiving end of that. So this cliche here was real specific to my Bible-based cult. We use the terms, someone's either in Adam, meaning you're in your natural birth flesh personality or life, or you're in Christ, meaning you're operating from your born again or new spiritual life. And with that, you know, at first when you hear that, you find scriptures to rationalize it, and you say, oh yeah, the Bible uses these terms. I don't want to be in Adam anymore. I'm born again. I want to be in Christ. Those people over there, they don't know the gospel like I do. So they're still in Adam, and I can't really fellowship with people who are in darkness and are still ruled by the God of this world. And so I had just so received this doctrine that it was justification for me to cut off anybody in my life from getting too close that wasn't part of the doctrine, or as part of the small group that I was in, even other Christian people, because they didn't know the deep things that we knew. And I could do it just like the dispensing of existence. I could just turn a light off on somebody because they were just in Adam, you know? And soon it was just like, they didn't even have to preach from the pulpit being in Adam or being in Christ. I was so programmed with that. I was brainwashing myself, if you will. I could just say, oh, that person's in Adam. I'm not going to have anything to do with them anymore. Well, that old friend of mine, they're not in Christ. They're not living in the truth. They're not walking in the light. I don't have any fellowship with them anymore. So I would stop all communication with them. And with that, it really kept me separate from anybody who could ever bring any sort of conflicting information that what I was believing what wasn't true. Now, real quick, on the other side of that, having family members that are still in that particular group, one of the hardest things that I went through when I left was how my family members just cut me off right away. I mean, it was like within 1 week, we went from having communication to none when me and my family left the group. And it's very, very hard to be on the other side of that. But at the same time, I've had to realize that I did that same thing to people for many years, thinking I was doing God's work, thinking I was putting God first. So I've been on both ends of that before, and it is really hurtful when you have family members who will just cut you off, or a loved one who will just cut you off right away. But it's part of being programmed, right? And part of being under mind control. But you can get out of it, right? You can get free from it indeed. So, strengthening your critical thinking skills, right, will greatly reduce the risk of being manipulated by thought-stopping techniques. And there's so much that can be said on this. But I just thought, moving forward, if you have never been in a group and you want to know how to prevent yourself maybe from, take some preventative measures from being recruited into such types of abuse, or if you've come out of a group and you're wanting to gain your critical thinking back, you're wanting to learn, like Dr. Matthews said, trust yourself again in your own mind, maybe for the first time if you were born and raised in a group, how to learn to listen to your intuition in your own mind and not think it's the enemy of God, or not think it's wrong, right? Some questions you might want to ask yourself and allow yourself to ask is what is really being shared with me right now? Is that really what's being said? Are there things that are not being said from what's being presented to me? Question that. Am I just agreeing with these people right now, with this group, because I want to fit in and I need to belong and I need friends and I'm trying to be a part of this? What's my motive for shaking my head and kind of agreeing to these ideas? What evidence is there that this program really works? What do the lives look like that have been through this program? Are they all mysteriously dropping off? What's the hard evidence? What is this group really representing? Begin to look at it from more angles than just the one that someone's putting in front of you right now, using flattery probably, or love bombing to draw you closer. This is the last slide. I just have resources on the last one, but I thought this quote was really, really, really great. This person, Françoise Tremblay, says, barring certain types of mental illness, right? There are times when using thought-stopping techniques are beneficial, but you should never try to stop your own thoughts of questioning something, especially when you feel inside that something is not right. That is part of what makes you human, and that is part of what makes you free agent with a free mind. And we have been given that right to think for ourselves, which is something very precious and that I fight for, knowing what it's like to have given that over to a doctrine and to really another human being who is a narcissist. It's basically self-brainwashing. Criticism of oneself or of one's own ideas, criticism of others or other people's ideas, criticism of institution, criticism of received beliefs are all necessary and beneficial for the individual and for society. Stopping oneself from confronting evil or questioning something that doesn't feel right is in a sense support for the survival and propagation of evil ideas and evil institution. So it's therefore detrimental for the individual and for society. So critical thinking, I wish, being a high school teacher, I wish I could teach a class on critical thinking, wow, that could save my students from a whole bunch of relationship issues. It would have been great if I had a lesson on that, to criticize in the sense of questioning, knowing that it's okay to question things and come to your own conclusions and not give so much of your mind over to something that you don't even really know what it is. So with that, I feel like that's all I have to say at the end of this. I just have my resources where I got this information, but I know we can have a great discussion, the four of us, about critical thinking, as Doug and Wendy and Dr. Matthews have so much to share.
So that was very good. Thank you, Molly, for sharing that with us.
Welcome.
I had this to say about it. One of the thought-stopping, thought-blocking cliches that our cult leader used, and by the way, if you want to start a cult, this is the perfect one saying to get everybody to stop thinking. It is, your mind is the Antichrist. Because if your mind is the Antichrist, anything that you think is wrong, right? So if you want to shut down somebody's and get a lot of followers, all you have to do is convince them that their mind is the Antichrist.
Yeah.
So nothing they think is right. So they have to, whatever the cult leader says, because apparently his mind is not the Antichrist, then that's what you go with.
Yeah. Well, he said our cult, just talking about that. Our cult leader said that he didn't think, he didn't talk to himself. He all of the time when he wasn't preaching, he was just speaking in tongues to himself. That's what he said. Now that's not true, but that's what he said. Yeah. So
in our cult, one of the things that they used a lot was preventative thoughts. So if you think this, then immediately stop thinking. So if you question or doubt, you're using your natural mind, you're an enemy to God. So stop questioning, stop thinking. And if you pray and you get the wrong answer, like I said before, then you're of the devil. The other kind of preventative thoughts were, they use these labels. So if you read anything that is against this group, then it is anti-God, anti-Christ. It is anti-literature. Or if, so just like something like paying tithing, you must pay tithing because you will be burned at the last day if you don't. So it's, if you question it, do I want to be burned? And people would say fire insurance, you don't want to be burned. So you don't even stop thinking about tithing. I must pay my tithing. I think the funniest one is if you had a sexual thought or you thought about masturbating, you were supposed to sing a hymn. So it's like you cannot sing any kind of religious hymn. So I think it's funny that if, pairing of behavioral responses, have a sexual thought, sing a hymn. Can you imagine sitting in church singing that hymn and it leading to sexual thoughts, and just how that cycle would be? But it's this constant, if this, think this, and you stop the critical thinking, which was so consistent. If you think that coffee tastes good or it smells good, you think that that's Satan tempting you. So there's always an answer.
Right.
And I have a friend who has been to the forum or the focus or whatever they're calling it now. And so he may tell me something and I'll kind of challenge it. I'll say, well, blah, 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 blah. Asking a question. He will say, don't say that. Don't say that. You're putting bad vibrations into the universe. Don't utter it. Don't utter it.
Yeah. I think the universe has already got some bad vibrations.
I think so too.
But that's what he's been taught, is if those thoughts about questions, whatever, well, you can't say them because it'll screw up the whole universe.
Well, and I know I was called in several times by my pastor, whatever you want to call him, to say, you've got to stop questioning because you're building doubt in other people. If you have questions, only come to me. Don't ask questions in the group. So this whole thing of there's only one person who can answer is, stops critical thinking, shuts it down.
Well, and the other thing to remember is that it's very important to never think about a pink elephant, because oh, wait a minute. And that's the problem really with thought stopping, isn't it? It ultimately, it really doesn't work, because you have to focus on something a little bit to try to stop a thought. So if I say don't think about a pink elephant, you've already thought about a pink elephant.
And it really builds a culture of shame, because if I've thought about a pink elephant and you've told me not to, it's just this constant shame and guilt built into you of, I am so evil. I am so, what did you say, Molly, of Adam? And in mine, it was like the natural man,
Right. In the flesh or in a lot of, but Wendy brought up the fellow from the large group awareness training group. It can be just negative thoughts, or what, it doesn't have to be in a religious context, but it's the same thing. It's this idea that you're not allowed to let your mind think what it naturally wants to think, but it's kind of like trying to dam up a stream. It'll find its way around. So it's it's not it's kind of a doomed effort.
Yeah.
They talk about speaking things into existence. Well, golly, I wish it were that easy. I've spoken a lot of things into existence, but it doesn't. That's a part of that magical thinking.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
easier in some ways to just kind of believe the cliches, the thought stopping. I mean, it's not easier if you're not questioning it because of fear. That's like bondage, and it's miserable to live in that. But also, it takes work to think for yourself and to question things and to go look for answers and to live with that uncertainty of not having that answer. If you're
Right.
really going to critically think, you have to be okay with the shades of gray and realize, I don't know the answer yet. I'm not sure that's the answer, but I'm not gonna bite on that and swallow that as reality. So for me, I had to learn with having a lot of uncertainty in my life, and that's part of letting my thoughts grow and explore and learn, because sometimes it was easier just to have this black and white thinking. This is white, this is black, and it's like life really, it just isn't that way.
No, no, it's true.
Yeah, we were told that God's people are a happy people and we weren't supposed to be sad, so we had to put a smile on our face and it would stop us from feeling sad. But I think what it did is it led to a lot of depression in people. When I first started becoming a counselor, the pastor came to me and he was like, "I'm so glad you are, because we have a lot of depression in our group." And I'm like, I wonder why. Everybody looks so happy. You keep telling us to look happy and it'll make us happy. But there was a tremendous amount of depression and shame within that.
Right, right, right. Because you're fighting against yourself all the time. I mean, that's tiresome. That's hard. Yeah. And it causes you to be fake and to be false, and which creates its own issue because you lose respect for yourself, and yeah, it's hard. That's that false cult identity.
Right. But the whole thing of living in ambiguity, Molly, I think is really true. Is once you leave and you have to live within not knowing, it's a really difficult thing to do, because you've always known that there is one answer, there is one way, and to come out and go, I don't know, I don't have an answer. It's a really hard thing to cultivate and feel comfortable in.
Yeah.
It's time.
Right.
Okay. Well, we will now go on. Well, I guess we're going to take a break, and then we'll get back again and start with the next presentation, and then we'll have the Q&A. Okay. Thank you.